All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Thank everyone for being here. We really appreciate you all. Rodney, would you come do the invocation for us?
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this glorious day you created for us. Father, we just pray that your Spirit will guide this meeting, Father. We thank you for the blessing to be able to be here, Father. We just pray for guidance and discernment, Father. We thank you for this day. We thank you most of all for the salvation through your Son, Jesus Christ. And through his name I pray, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Derek will lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, guys. Ethics and conflict disclosure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 160A-86 in Davie County Board of Commissioners Code of Ethics adopted December 2019, I would ask each of you before you adopt the agenda if there's any actual, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest with respect to any matter that's on the agenda that will come for vote today. If so, please speak up and let the board know at this time before the agenda is adopted. Mr. Chair, seeing no one speak up, I'd conclude there's no actual, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest with regards to any board member.
Thank you, Mr. Vogler. Now we will take a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Ms. Finney, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Reniger, any discussion? All in favor? All right, Brian, reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start off today with our temporary seasonal permits presentation from Mr. Easter. This is a continuation of a discussion we had a couple of months ago. We took some feedback from you all and are ready to give you, I guess, part B or round two for any other feedback that you may have.
Good morning, board. I have been instructed with a note to grab the podium, so if it looks a little awkward, and speak into it so they can clearly hear me, because I tend to wander, but I apologize for that. So,
Good preacher.
yeah, I guess. I like to kind of walk around like this. So maybe get me one of those headsets. So, as Mr. Barnett said, this is a kind of a follow-up from what we presented for temporary seasonal uses for the zoning ordinance and the table of uses, and went back and reviewed some of my notes as well as reviewed the meeting and kind of addressed some of the concerns that this board had with this. So this is the current regulation as it stands right now. Temporary seasonal uses and structures, the establishment of temporary sales lots for farmers markets, Christmas trees, and other seasonal agricultural products, plus related goods, is permitted up to a maximum of 3 months upon the issuance of a temporary use permit by the zoning administrator. The conditions of the storage of goods and sale of goods from a trailer shall be prohibited. This use may only be located on a vacant lot or a lot occupied by non-residential use. Off-street parking may be provided behind or to the side of the establishment, but not forward of the required front setbacks. Off-site parking may be provided on a dust-free surface area and need not to comply with additional paving requirements. These are the only zoning districts that will allow this: highway business, neighborhood business, community shopping district, general industrial, heavy industrial district. This makes up less than 2% of all zoning districts currently in Davie County. So here are the proposed regulations as submitted. Temporary seasonal uses, events. The red is what I've added that is different, and structures. The establishment of temporary sales lots for farmers markets, Christmas trees, corn maze, and other seasonal agricultural products, plus related goods, is permitted up for a maximum of 3 months upon the issuance of a temporary use permit by the zoning administrator. Flea markets, craft fairs, gun shows, cruise-ins, concerts, motor vehicle shows, carnivals, rodeos, tractor pulls, and other seasonal events are permitted up to 3 consecutive days, no more than 4 times in a 1-year period, in the same location upon the issuance of a temporary use permit by the zoning administrator. This is what I've added. Any standalone single-day event and or all church events on church-owned property shall be exempt. So, for example, of a standalone single one-day event, if somebody wants to hold a car wash, a dog wash, bake sale, a 5K run walk, yard sale, bingo, chicken stew, fish fry, like a barbecue sale, or poker run, those are all exempt. Those standalone one-day single events. So your local routine, your local fire departments, or anything associated that hold the chicken stew or the barbecue sale, porta pit chicken, poker run, whatever, those are exempt. And any church event will be exempt. So if I'm having a fall bazaar or anything associated that the church does on church property would be exempt from this regulation as well. Same conditions shall apply as what we're not looking to change conditions. We are going to be adding an application for seasonal events made by the zoning administrator on a form and manner prescribed by him or her by the person who will organize, sponsor, or hold the seasonal event. The application will be filled out with the zoning administrator at least 60 days prior to the commencement of the seasonal event. The application shall contain the following information: identification of the applicant, identification of any persons responsible for organizing, sponsoring, or holding the seasonal event, location of the proposed seasonal event, estimated maximum number of persons reasonably expected to be in attendance at one time, the date or dates and the hours during which the seasonal event would be conducted, and a statement as to the total time period involved. Hours of operations shall be limited to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The application shall also accompanied by an outline map of the area to be used to approximate scale showing all locations of proposed and existing laboratory facilities, all parking areas, existing structures, vendor areas, stages, all water supply sources, including lakes, ponds, streams, wells, storage tanks, and the like, and all areas of assemblage, all food service areas, all garbage and refuse storage and disposal areas, all entrances and exits to public roadways and emergency ingress and egress roads. I'm asking also as well to increase the areas, zoning districts, and include RA, R20, R12, and R8, so in a residential type zoning district as well. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Will you go back to the page that lists the changes of what the events could be? See, that's just not, some of those events just do not go together at all. I don't know that someone should have to go through all of that big to-do to have a car show.
Well, if it's over 3 days, a 3-day, a weekend event, they're holding a car show. It's just an example. If they're holding a 3-day event at local, if they're going to do a fundraiser car show included with a concert with that, I can remove that. But that's more of a 3-day, or it's an ongoing event in the community with that.
Well, and like farmers market, Christmas trees, and then rodeo and tractor pulls, those are 2 different worlds. Those are not in the same league at all, in my opinion.
Okay.
So, which, I mean, as I've stated before, I'm very apprehensive about this anyway, because I do not want tractor pulls popping up all over Davie County. I think there's about 2 suitable places in this county for a tractor pull.
Okay.
And Farmington Community Center is not one of those suitable places.
So, back to something you just said, or I think I heard you say. These events, because she mentioned car shows, and these events, 3 days, but not consecutive days. You used the word ongoing.
Well, 3 consecutive days, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay.
But you used the word ongoing. What if someone has a car show once a month, twice a month?
And other seasonal events are permitted up to 3 consecutive days, no more than 4 times a year. If they're doing it every month, then we're gonna be looking at rezoning the property and maybe doing a special use permit. That is not temporary anymore. That doesn't meet the issuance of that. So if they're doing it more than 4 times a year at the same location, that they would have to do rezoning of the property. That is not considered temporary as by this.
The, your application process, now let me say, for instance, some of these events could happen at the Davie Community Center. Are are those folks that want to have an event at the Park and Rec facility going to have to go through their application process and then your application process?
No, we don't have jurisdiction over that. That's in the town of Moxville. We do not have jurisdiction over that.
Okay.
This is your Ruitans, you're just out in the non-incorporated areas of Davie County. If somebody, a local fundraiser, a local Boy Scout troop has a vacant piece of property somewhere in the county and they want to set up and sell pine needles, seasonal, currently, unless it's zoned legally as per our zoning ordinance, they cannot do that. If they choose to set up and sell pine needles or sell plants or whatever like that and have an ongoing over 3-month period in the springtime, this would allow them to do that. As I stated earlier, 98% of the county is not zoned neighborhood business, community business, heavy industrial, or that. It's more RA, R20. So if on a vacant lot, if they meet these parameters, it would allow them to do this.
So a Boy Scout troop, in order to sell pine needles, is gonna have to give you a map and have bathrooms and all
No.
that stuff.
No.
That's what that said.
No, it doesn't. That is for the organized, that's an event. That's not a standalone temporary, that they would not have to do that. They would not. The application is just for the events, not a temporary seasonal use. The event is your car show, your event is the rodeo, the tractor pull, those various things like that.
In your mind and in your board's mind, what have you done here? I mean, what are you doing?
We have allowed individual 501c3s, organizations to legally do fundraisers over a seasonal type fundraiser. Currently, if we follow the letter of the law, if we get a complaint over that local Boy Scout troop or that local Little League that's setting up wanting to sell Christmas trees, they cannot. They cannot.
Based on the zoning.
Correct.
Based on the zoning. So, we'll have to read over this and look at it, and we'll come back in July and vote on it, I'm sure. But what if we just expanded the zoning that the previous ordinance was allowable under?
Absolutely. That's what I've done in this, in essence.
Well, you've done more than that, but would then the things that you just mentioned become allowable if we simply expanded the places that they can do those things?
Absolutely. Yeah. Currently, as it stands, it says temporary seasonal uses and structures, establishment of temporary sales lots for farmers markets, Christmas trees, and other seasonal agricultural products, plus related good, is permitted up to a maximum of 3 months upon issuance of a zoning, of a temporary use permit by the zoning administrator. This is currently the only areas that you can do this is highway business, neighborhood business, community shopping district, general industrial district, and heavy industrial district, which is less than probably 2% of Davie County.
So we expand to those other zoning areas that you talked about.
Yep.
If we do that, then under what you're currently bringing before us, what would be excluded? Would anything be excluded?
Okay. So this
You
would not-
mentioned several events a minute ago, Boy Scouts, whatever.
What I did with that, and
Yeah.
it doesn't say if it's profit or nonprofit. The only thing that I incorporated in this would be events. So currently so if somebody wanted to hold a carnival, if somebody wanted to hold a concert series or something, a tractor pull, a rodeo in the county, okay, There's no, unless it's a mass gathering, and that's a whole nother animal. If one of these 3-day, if somebody had some property, I've got 100 acres out here in Davie County, and I want to hold a big concert series, there's nothing that would allow that. In essence, there's nothing that wouldn't allow it, honestly. So this just to put some parameters in it that where it gives them kind of a means to go through to make sure, you know, we know it's happening, in essence.
Johnny, let's go a little off of this particular part of it. I mean, right now, isn't a lot of what we allow not really supported by zoning rules, but it's just kind of been a don't ask, don't tell, it
Yes.
just happens, kind of
Yes.
like a church thing or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
So either we address it in some way or we just continue to just,
Well, there's a difference in addressing it in some way by adding 2 words,
right.
changing the zoning the zoning areas and adding the word event to the first paragraph he just presented, than adding what that application process looked like.
And I'm not really addressing the application process. I'm there, but if there's a need, if we don't think there's a need to address a church doing something and we don't want to do that, then what I'm saying is our 2 options are to just keep doing like we've been doing until somebody complains, or put that part. I'm more interested in talking about that particular portion than this other portion, because I think, I see what a church wants to do as being totally different. And, I happen to have my wife that coordinates a farmer's market, but that farmer's market happens to be on church property. So it's kind of like testing 2 portions of the rule there. So I'm not as focused on this portion of it as I am about, do we or do we not need to codify something that addresses somebody having their own yard sale at their house, churches having things and all that. I think the things I'm concentrated on more are the non-permitting type things, basically, anyway, because none of those would be permitting things. Sure. Okay.
Sure.
Just want to make sure.
Mr. Easter, did kind of building on what Brent or Commissioner Joe said, the don't ask, don't tell. What was the impetus for this? Did you get a bunch of complaints? Or
I do get complaints from time to time, but I have had a couple of organizations reach out inquiring about doing events and what would be involved with those events. So you say, okay, if we're getting calls about this, and a lot of this stuff is anticipating, reading the room. I think the purpose of the zoning ordinance is some of the local county ordinances address some of the concerns of what's rumbling and lead from ahead, and not be proactive as opposed to reactive in some of these instances. So if we get inquiries about this, say, hey, look, maybe this is something that we can address, that this board can address and the planning board can address. And going forward with this, if people choose to do this, we can specifically point them to say, this is what it takes, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and these are the parameters. I've had discussions with Ed and Mr. Barnett about addressing some of these issues, to saying it's not really addressed. Some of the municipalities around here address some of these in their zoning ordinances with this. But just to say, hey, look, if you want to do this, this is what it takes to happen. I've had a couple of people reach out to me with various things, and some things that are just, I guess, grandiose, want to have concerts and, stuff like that. But, I think this is just the ability just to address this. And then also with some of the stuff, if nothing more than being allowed some of these temporary seasonal uses, these Christmas tree lots, if somebody complains about it, like I said, 98% of the county doesn't meet the zoning of this. And if somebody wants to set up somewhere in Farmington on a vacant lot and sell Christmas trees, here, you can do it, this is what it can. And it's some of those to address some of those issues with this. I'm not looking to upset the apple cart and create a lot of issues with this, but when I start receiving calls and I feel like our current county ordinances don't address some of these issues, I think it's time for us to maybe consider them, if you will.
Well, I do think there's some merit in having a discussion about some of these things, because I want it to be clear that some knucklehead that moves here from somewhere that where the government is the answer to everything wants to complain about a church having something that disturbed them at 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't really want to deal with that stuff. So if it helps to really make that clear that they don't have even a leg to stand on, I'm all for that part of it. Now, some of these other ones, I know there's some at least problematic issues with regard to people wanting to say you can't have a flea market somewhere, and it's not really disturbing the community. So if there's ways that anything in the ordinance can help that so that it doesn't give somebody, to a complainant, so to speak, an option, I think I'll look at anything we can do that does not turn our freedom of use type county sentiment into a municipality / suburban area. I want it to be that way I want it to help be less restrictive. And I think some of what you've got in there is trying to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
The two things. One is, if it's in the municipality, their zoning applies,
100%.
not this policy.
Correct.
So these flea market questions that we've had, this doesn't even
Nope.
apply.
Correct.
Secondly, Ed, it seemed like you wanted to say something when he first began.
I think Johnny said that the hours of restriction was from 8 to 8. And I think in your actual document, it says from 8 to 10.
Yeah, it's 8 to 10. I apologize if I misspoke. Yeah, it's 8 to 10. Yeah.
But clarify, make sure I'm not confused on something. Take the municipality out of it. Right now, if somebody wanted to do a responsibly done flea market on a reasonably sized tract of land with decent ingress, egress, and all that, what protects them from having nosy neighbor that moved from out of state to complain about that?
In our zoning ordinance addresses specifically flea markets through a special use permit, but that's more of a permanent, every weekend, all the time, it's there.
Like the one on 158.
Yeah, and that's under, so if I wanted to say, I wanted to have the ability to get together, and I've got local craftsmen as more of an ongoing, like farmers selling summer fairs for vegetable and fruits, and we're setting up the same weekend, the same time every weekend for 3 or 4 months. Unless it's one of those specific zonings, they cannot do that. So if the neighbors complained, then we would say, hey, look, they can't do it. We send a cease and desist. And we start adjudicating the process of them happening, unless it's that specific zoning or it's on a bona fide farm. If it's on a bona fide farm, then we can't touch it.
So is the place on 158 now properly?
That's on a bona fide farm.
Okay.
I've dealt with them. That is a bona fide farm, so it's exempt from zoning regulations with that.
Okay, one final question. What protects me and my daughter from selling produce in our front yard? Because as much as it's rained now, we may have a bounty.
Those standalone this wouldn't address those little standalone, those are addressed in building code. They're addressed in variable, we see them everywhere. Well, I don't see them everywhere, but they're throughout the county, where they have fresh farm eggs or vegetable. You pull up and you put the $5 bill and pull away the little front,
That's already okay.
That's okay. We're not touching those. We're not touching those. It's that group of 15 local farmers or vendors or gardeners want to get together and sell stuff at an ongoing place. We're setting up at 123 Smith Road, and we're going to sell there. We're going to be there every weekend and we're sending Facebook pages and all that. Unless it's highway business, one of those specific zoning, they're not allowed to do that by the zoning ordinance. If it's not one of those, and as we said, 98% of the county is R20 or RA. And if nothing else, and consider this, and I understand there's some of the things in here, and I understand there's some issues with that. I just think it's just, if we're really looking at addressing and allowing some of these things that no one in here, if I want to set up on a vacant lot somewhere and have a group of local farmers come in and sell stuff off-site, in my personal opinion, we should be able to do that. That's kind of the look at this. And if nothing else, if we have some issues associated with this, I think that's something we should really consider as a county looking to allow that.
Johnny, does this in any way affect the person that once or twice a year has a yard sale,
No. We're not touching.
even if the neighbor complains?
Even the neighbor complains. If the neighbor complains, we'll address it. No, yard sales it's kind of old standalone. And if it's an ongoing, every yard, and I'm not looking to do that. I know there's some specific municipalities that address those. If it's ongoing, then at that time we could address it. We would address it, yeah.
One final thing is that are the churches okay as of now, or do we need that second portion as far as to make it?
In my opinion, the
clear-cut?
churches are, that's my opinion. But then again, we've had this discussions on multiple occasions. It's been raised by this board. That's my opinion. 15 years, this board has changed and someone else isn't in this position, and they look at it and they go, oh, wait, we're not addressing that. Sometimes I think if it's clear in black and white and we address certain issues, it takes all ambiguity out of it. It takes all opinion, my opinion, your opinion. If it's clear and says we're exempt from this, on church property, we're good to go with that. If they have a homecoming coming in and they're doing a celebration over the weekend and they're setting up tents outside and they're doing stuff, if we get calls, people can complain, people can sue, people can do that, but we can point to this and say, technically they're exempt from every bit of this, and we can address that. So I think with all that, we do get calls and complaints from time to time about everything. So I just think if there's an issue with that, if there's any area, sometimes it's better to address those issues and put it in the ordinance where it's black and white and not up for interpretation.
Will the application, and we can talk about this some more at the July meeting, will the application be used to deny an event? In other words, if all the characteristics that you indicated in the application that they needed, if they were not able to present those, or let's just say somebody wanted to, we want to have Love Valley out in Sheffield,
Right.
and they're bringing in 25,000, 50,000 people. Would the application process be used to deny an event that otherwise, based on the new regulations,
Yes.
would?
They would have to meet the parameters of the application.
So who would make that decision?
Our office, the zoning administrator would. We would deny it. Yeah. It's the same thing. We have that with everything. You submit an application for anything that we do. You have to meet the parameters of the application, submit a complete application, or it's denied with any event. Some of these larger, like what you talk about, the Love Valley, that might fall into, there's the mass gathering ordinance with that. That would kick over into that. If they don't meet those parameters through emergency services, through the fire marshal's office, through aspects with environmental health that they're serving food, then we can deny it. Like 100% we could. Normally this is just to put it on there. It's not.
But under the current ordinance, it wouldn't qualify at all because you don't have the term event.
We don't have the term event in there. And unless it's not, if it's a mass gathering, then they would kick over. But if it's not a mass gathering, I don't know. That's a conversation Ed and Mr. Barnett and I have had numerous occasions. Can we deny it from happening? Don't know. It's not specifically spelled out in the zoning ordinance, so a lot of times if it's not spelled out, it's implied you can do it. If it's not specifically says you can't, then it means you can.
Any other questions?
But wouldn't you have to have specifications for each event that the application would have to meet in order to give you a backbone to deny or approve?
Yeah.
This is very open-ended.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. I mean, we could do that. I mean, there's certain aspects to get involved. Mainly with some of these, the event organizer, a lot of these are just to let us know it's going on, where it's at, when it is. The neighbors call. We know it's coming through advertising. A lot of this stuff is on Facebook, and people will call and say, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure environmental health, once we get that, if they're selling food, will be contacted. fire marshal's office, emergency services, police department would all be noticed. These things pop up from time to time if they do, and we don't know anything about it. There's no means to say, hey, look, our ordinance, we need to address this, we need to look at this, but, I mean, like I said, this is a rough draft. This is stuff, I've taken some of the stuff from the mass gathering ordinance, some of the stuff associated with that, aspects of that in where these events.
Well, let's do this. We got to get to the budget and some other things this morning. Hey, a lot of great questions. Johnny, thank you so much. Commissioners, continue to look over it. If you have any red lines you want to talk to Johnny or Brian about in regards to this, let's just get with them before our July meeting. Otherwise, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Karen, will you send us a copy of the mass gathering ordinance as well?
Good morning. This morning we'll go through May year-to-date versus last May year-to-date. As you can see, we're about $600,000 better than we were last fiscal year, and that's pretty much solely due to the property tax amount. Sales tax, what we see here is about 7 months' worth, but it's been flat but consistent. We found that all around the state it's either flat or a little bit lower, so we continue to track that. We have expenditures about $2.5 million more than they were last fiscal year. We're still all within budget. So right now, we have $21,000 more expenditures than we do revenues for the general fund. Keep in mind at the bottom there, last fiscal year, we had $5.5 million that we transferred because of the last of the American Rescue Plan funding. So we added about $6 million to fund balance this year. We will not be in that position this fiscal year. Here are the revenues. The bars are the current fiscal year. The yellow line is last fiscal year, and the green line is fiscal year 23. So let me know if you have any questions.
One question.
Yes.
When will we know if we will be in a position at all to add anything to fund balance, or are we not going to be able to add anything?
I doubt at this point that we will be adding to fund balance this fiscal year. Typically in June, we have a little bit more expenditures than we do revenues just because of what time of year it is. You know, since we rely on property taxes very much, really the only thing that we're collecting at this point are the really hard to collect property taxes and vehicle taxes. So it'll probably be more along the lines of August before we get all of our expenditures in. You know, we'll have our revenues in hopefully a little bit before then. But, you know, we're looking in, you know, a couple more months, you know, right before we give trial balances to auditors in late August.
Because these are real expenditures and not like budgeted numbers that give us a little flexibility, right?
Right, yes. Yeah, what you're seeing there in those middle columns anyway, those are actual numbers of things. So, are there any more questions?
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Kind of in a continuation of what Johnny did with the temporary seasonal use permit, wanted to present to you guys first draft of looking at the tannerite issue that we have here in the county with a tannerite ordinance. And again, everything here is draft format, so as the chair said earlier, if there's anything that you want to redline or go through or make any changes, just know that if we decide to move forward with this, we will have to do a public hearing because it is an ordinance change. So we'll have to have proper notice whenever we get to that point, if we get to that point. The purpose of this particular ordinance, of this article, is to implement standards for the detonation of explosives that may cause injury, death, or damage to personal property, whereas preserving the personal freedom to engage in such activities while promoting health, safety, welfare, and the prosperity of the citizens of Davie County. Oops, left off Wild County, but we have authority to do this through General Statute 153A 128. It gives you all the ability to create an ordinance if you so shall please. Kind of like we talked about earlier with the seasonal temporary permits, this would only be enacted within the unincorporated areas of the county. So if there's an issue within the municipalities, that would be up to them to have their own ordinance and their own set of enforcements. This would only be in the case out in the unincorporated areas. I'm not going to read all these direct definitions. You all have a copy of this, but part of the ordinance does break down specific definitions. I think obviously the explosions are the big ones, and I think the permanent building and the public gathering spaces are the big definitions that really play a large hand in the ordinance that I'm going to present to you here in a second, because really, truly, the teeth of the ordinance involves permanent buildings and public gathering places. But in terms of permanent building, means a building which is built, constructed, used, or intended to support or shelter any use of occupancy that is attached to real property by the means of permanent foundation, plumbing, electrical connection, and is required to obtain a building permit or undergo an inspection process in accordance with North Carolina building codes. And then public gathering places means locations that are subject to the assembly of groups of individuals for a uniform purpose. The following shall be considered public gatherings: schools, care groups, homes, governmental buildings, and grounds. But I think obviously that could be extended to other type locations as well. So really the meat of this, and I will go through each one of these, there are several, if we want to move forward with this, it shall be unlawful for any person within 1,500 feet as measured in a straight line from the point of detonation to the property line of any public gathering place, or without written consent of the owners or tenants of all dwellings or permanent buildings located within 1,500 feet as measured in a straight line from the point of detonation. You see that 1,500, you probably ask, where's that coming from? That's just coming from standard language that we've looked at from other counties. I don't think that's a hard, fast amount, but just looking at what other counties have implemented, 1,500 feet has been the number. Carelessly or needlessly and wanton disregard of safety of others, without due caution or circumspection, in a manner as to endanger any person or property and resulting in unlawful damage, property damage, or bodily harm of others, or in a manner resulting in projectiles or shrapnel leaving the property to which the detonation occurred. Expanded. While under the influence of alcohol or controlled substance, under the influence would be determined by the investigating officer that the person is intoxicated by alcohol or narcotics to the point where physical and mental faculties are appreciably diminished, or in the form of an exploding target with an encapsulated, therefore creating a projectile or shrapnel. And then finally, basically from the hours of sunset to sunrise, this type of event occurring at night. There would be exemptions, and most of these are what you would expect. Officers or enlisted personnel of the Armed Forces of the United States, while in performance of their official duties, are acting under orders requiring them to carry arms, weapons, or explosives. Civil officers of the United States, while in performance of their official duties. Officers of the state or of any county, city, or town charged with the execution of laws that the state, while acting in performance of their official duties, and the detonation of explosives at a property permitted, an approved firing range, or facility as such prior to adoption of this ordinance. Some more exemptions would be in performance of historical ceremonies or commemorative functions that are conducted involving the discharge of firearms or detonations of explosives that do not involve the release of projectiles. Any individual group or company that possesses a valid permit and is operating under all federal, state, and local guidelines prescribed for such use, and the use of pyrotechnics or fireworks meeting exempt specifications as referred to in North Carolina general statutes. Looking at other counties, in most cases this is a class 3 misdemeanor. Conviction can result up to, but not more than $500, and imprisonment not exceeding 30 days. So, any questions? Most of this is all coming, looking at other counties and seeing what they've enacted, just using them as a guide for our initial conversation. I did send a copy of this over to the sheriff's office to have some input from them, and they did provide some. But just as a starting point, this is what we have. And then again, if there's changes that you'd like to see put in there, we will double check with the general statutes to make sure we can do those. And then if we decide to move forward, again, we would have to have a public hearing to do such.
Does Tannerite have any commercial applications? I mean, they didn't invent this stuff for people to shoot at and explode, so what?
A commercial, it would have to, because you have, as an exemptions, you know, we have official capacities that would use them. I think it's called Tannerite, but I think in principle, it would be any type of explosive type use. I know in my time here, we had a situation, I think Mike Work, you can clarify, but we had to use some type of explosives for a beaver dam. And we brought in the proper people, and they're all permitted, and I would imagine if you live near that area, it probably sounded like Tannerite. But that would be an acceptable use. Be honest with you guys, I had never heard of Tannerite until I moved here, but I've heard it. So I know it's a thing. So, and this has come up a couple times, and we figured this was a good time to start this process if this is something we want to look into.
Are we addressing Tannerite, or are we addressing Tannerite and other explosives?
I think it's other explosives as well. If you read I mean, now I might have to lean on Ed to further clarify that, but I think if you truly read it, under that description of Tannerite, it talks about explosives in general.
Or are we wanting to outright ban Tannerite except with these exceptions, or how does that transfer over to other explosives? And I guess what I'm getting towards there is what about, how's this extend to fireworks?
Well, fireworks would be exempt because they follow all of the state rules and regulations. If it's a firework event, so 4th of July, we do at the community park, we go through all the proper channels. I think, as it's stated here,
Well, does this give any teeth to fireworks
if you go
on
down,
my back 25 that going to put into play JD needing to come out and handcuff me and take me in?
I would say in this particular case, no, because that's fireworks. I mean, if you go down to South Carolina and you shoot off fireworks for the 4th of July off your back deck, I'm sure the sheriff's office is still going to get calls about it, but
I know it's different about the law about just shooting them off in North Carolina, but or is it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
legal is illegal.
But we know that these go on, and I don't want to create extra. Okay, it wouldn't overly burden you. Okay. One other thing about this then, do the hours of sunset to sunrise have anything to do with any unintended consequence like with fireworks? Because fireworks don't look really good at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Or is fireworks just out of it altogether? Gotcha. I just want to make sure, because but we talk about Tannerite and then we talk about explosives, so I'm honestly trying to grasp where the delineation is. And then the only final thing I would ask is the 1,500 feet, to me, could be an impediment to law enforcement, because if you were in my yard and you were trying to walk the trails back to the 1,500 feet mark, it's not very easy to discern, and I'm not trying to, but I know you got somebody out there that might fuss about it, and I don't want them to have hire a standby surveyor to go with them. So that's all I'd say.
My question, Sheriff, in regards to, I have one question before. Do we have documented instances of people being injured in Davie County?
I don't know if the sheriff's department does.
I don't have any documented instances of
Property damage and noise. Yes. Yeah, no noise. The thing about the fireworks, the definitions here, and I understand this goes a little bit back to what Johnny was saying previously. In the context of what Brent's talking about, could fireworks be drawn in? Firecrackers, fireworks, whatever. We know on July, could they be drawn in by the definitions that are, if someone called you and complained?
No, because there are state laws that would override a county ordinance related to fireworks. There are specific state laws related to fireworks. That's what we would follow when you are working with a manufactured fireworks product.
So Brent's shooting off firecrackers, fireworks on his back 25, as he says, and someone calls you and complains about Brent shooting off fireworks. Their state has laws outside of the state.
We respond to that call now because it's illegal.
Okay. All right.
So my question about the 1,500 feet is that gonna help you? Because I would think most of this happens further than that away from places.
1,500 feet is a pretty good distance, and I think Brian and I's discussion when he asked, and I've had my staff review it too from an enforcement standpoint. You're not banning it, folks can still do it, so there has to be some definition. And to Brent's point, I think in discussions with my staff, the way we would measure that would be using the county's GIS. If it's that close that it's not an obvious violation, et cetera, we would use the county's GIS measurement tool and measure it. And that would be what we would use for everyone, so we're following the same pattern. And then if somebody wants to go to court and argue that our measurement's wrong, a judge could rule on it, and but I agree with Mr. Barnett, you have to have some point of reference to go by. I do agree with Brent, it'd be hard to have, there's some places in the county you're not gonna pull a tape measure 1,500 feet. That would not be practical, so.
Because I'm looking at it from practical enforcement and practical. A lot of what I've learned through working with my surveyor friend a little bit is that people really don't have any concept of distance after about a football field length or a baseball fence length.
Anything else? All right.
I would ask, is this something you want to move forward with or you want to think about? Because if we go for our next meeting, we have to go to the newspaper today to get the 2 weeks in for the public hearing.
I would like to ponder it a little bit
Okay.
more, and maybe if we shoot for August, I think, to discuss it.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right, motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Schoaf and Mr. Reniger seconds. All in favor? Okay. All right, Brian?
Okay, so in continuing our conversation about the recommended 2025-26 budget, so at this point in the recommended budget for next fiscal year, we have met with you all and made some additional changes to the recommended budget. These new changes equal $114,867,857. That does move the general fund up to $93,687,286. We did not change from our last presentation the $4,735,108 of the appropriated fund balance to balance the budget. In making those changes, when you look at all of our funds, you will see that there are changes in the general fund, the countywide fire fund, the public utilities fund, and the employee health fund. On the employee health fund and the public utilities fund, those the only changes that we made in our discussions with you all, we did recommend a 3% cost of living, and then we added an additional $1,000 retention bonus. And because we have employees in the public health fund and one employee in the we have employees in the public utilities fund and one employee in the public health fund, we had to adjust those to reflect that. On the general fund and the countywide fire fund, let's do the countywide fire fund first. On May 22nd, we had recommended $700,000 and $300,000 between our larger and our base departments. What you have today on January 19th is on our base departments, we are budgeting the full amount of the 4-cent countywide tax, plus for our base departments, instead of $300,000, is $315,000. That changes your general fund on the first line, and then also in the general fund, when we looked at our cost of living going from 3% plus the $1,000 retention bonus, those change your general fund totals as well. So that's where you get the difference between the May 22nd presentation and the June 19th.
Just for point of reference, Brian, when you just explained that you applied both of those amounts to, you said base departments both times.
315?
When you discuss the true 4 and then the 315, you referenced base departments first time, and you might want to repeat that.
Okay. So we have our 3 larger volunteer fire departments that we are going to apply the full 4% of the tax rate for the fire tax. And then for our remaining base departments, we are changing the May 22nd recommended budget from $300,000 per department to $315,000. So most of that change that you'll see here in a second is coming from a revenue side point. On the property tax side, you can see the change from $53.8 million in property tax to $54.5 million. As this being a reval year, what that does in comparison to your existing tax rate, your revenue neutral, and now your recommended tax rate, to make those changes puts the recommended non-fire 4-cent at $64.86. If you include the 4-cent for the fire tax, that's $68.86. Still left.
Brian, could you go back?
Sure.
Okay.
Still have our capital improvement plan items in place from a budgetary standpoint on the general fund and the public utility side.
Go back to that first one again. Okay, did you ever discuss the difference in using the back door for ADA as opposed to the front door?
No, we still don't have a direct number yet because we want to look at the back and the front door, but we kept the budget there in place. Obviously, I think we could adjust the budget when we get to that point, or we could adjust it now, but I think in having the conversations with you all, I think we need to investigate both of those options fully before we move forward with it.
I really want you to do that because I actually went to the library and looked at both of those entrances. And frankly, in my opinion, the back entrance is not only easier to accomplish, but it's also safer because they can, a handicapped person can park directly at that ramp and close to the door, whereas at that front location, they have to park in the main parking area and cross that traffic there. And where the end of the ramp is now, it's a pretty short distance from the end of the ramp to the roadway. So I think we need to really, really consider that, not only from a financial standpoint, but mostly from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, and we've looked at that, and we've had discussions about it. We're still getting the numbers together because not only would you have to do the ramp outside, but there's some internal changes that we'd have to make. We definitely feel if we go a different option than the main front option, it's going to be significantly less of a cost. We just need to get those together for you fully.
I really feel like it would also be safer. I don't think it's rude to ask people to go to that back entrance, especially if it's for their safety. So
continuing with capital improvement plan, we did not really make any changes on the utility side. On the personnel side, the only real change you'll see on the second bullet point is we added that $1,000 to the 3% COLA. Everything else remained the same from our conversations back from May 22nd. And that's pretty much it in terms of where we are today in our budget discussions.
The bonus would be distributed when?
I would like to do it in December.
Okay.
And I would like to, I'd like to set a hard date, as in you have to be employed by us by this date. I don't want somebody starting on November 30th and getting the retention bonus.
Yeah.
So we would need to figure out what that date, probably August 1st.
And
Sure you don't want to do it before Black Friday? No. I'm just-
Well, they start those sales early and they extend pretty long. So
there were a couple of positions that the commissioners had questions about that I know you indicated to the vice chair and myself that were still in the budget, but simply because they're current positions.
that's correct.
But that they are placeholders right now, and there would be no implementation to hiring those positions until we all have
Correct.
all
No.
singing out of the same hymn book.
Correct. Typically speaking, any of our vacant positions we budget for, but in this case, we have some specific positions that we've had some conversations and discussions about that we're still budgeting for them, but we're not going to implement, just like with the library situation. We're budgeting for it on paper so that we have that covered statutorily, but once we come to an agreement on what steps to move forward, then we'll enact them.
Other questions or comments? All right, I guess you've gotten pretty persistent questions from us, and you guys have been very responsive, and I know we really appreciate that. Okay, we'll speak now or forever hold our peace until commissioners' comments, if you have something else to say.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple points I would like
Please,
to make,
please.
if you don't mind. There are parts of this budget that I consider necessary and do support. Other parts I consider as excessive, including the 35 to 40% tax increase that we're proposing. This impacts severely our citizens on Social Security, disabled people, young people trying to build a life, people who own tracts of land who can no longer afford to keep it, and it ends up sold to developers, which we're trying to control by other means. People looking to retire but can't afford to. No one that I've spoken to over the past few months has felt that this tax increase is justified. After all, their salary or income has not increased by the same amount over the last 4 years. And we need to always remember the ability to pay taxes for most citizens is not without limits. And we should always consider our citizens and taxpayers first.
Thanks, Richard. Brent?
I hate using prepared comments in one way, but that way I would hope to not say anything incorrectly. I'd like to clear up any misconception regarding raises for the upcoming fiscal year. This is not an effort to persuade anyone, just to clarify. Due to what's called headline inflation, the costs related to basic necessities being much higher relative to overall inflation, I wanted to consider this year's raise be more linear raise because of effects of this type of inflation. Headline inflation is about 5%, overall inflation is closer to 3%. I looked at a linear model and a hybrid model. Due to restraints placed on the pot of money allocated for raises, I was uncertain as to what model would best achieve this goal. I originally proposed $1,900 across the board, but was hoping for probably $2,000. Upon further investigation, I started to favor more of a hybrid model. This model would add a fixed number to the base of all employees, plus a percentage. However, after receiving feedback from management that this plan would not work within the context of our salary schedule, I then made my proposal at the May 22nd workshop. Based on some feedback and research that it may work, I also kept in mind that to move the base forward still allowed for a merit-based step adjustment annually of 1.25% and a 5% milestone raise every year that's based on percentages. If put in place, all individuals currently earning up to $66,700 would have received the same raw dollar linear increase, but it would have been less than 3% after that amount. As I processed the data, my final suggestion was the hybrid model that would have been based on a $1,000 base adjustment for all employees plus a 2% raise. This model would have given an employee currently earning $40,000 an increase of $1,800 instead of $1,200, which is what the recommended 3% will give. All employees would have received a larger raise up to $100,000 in salary. An employee making $120 in salary would have received $3,400 increase instead of a $3,600 increase. There was nothing in any model that did not give all employees a raise. I repeat, there was nothing in any model that did not give all employees a raise. I would like to sincerely applaud our finance team on all the work that went into the step plan adopted at the beginning of our current fiscal year. It was a great tool to deal with a number of salary issues. It provides department heads the ability to appropriately place employees within the step system, and it further allows for employee mobility within the scale. I only see one flaw in our step system. It is almost entirely an exponential model. If we were fortunate enough to give a 3% raise along with the 1.25% merit increase and the 5% milestone raise, at the end of a 5-year cycle, an employee with a $45,000 salary would have an increase to approximately $58,000, which is an approximate increase of $13,000. An employee with a salary of $90,000 during this same window would increase to a salary of $116,000, which is an increase of approximately $26,000 plus, which is a much larger raw dollar amount. I've further discovered that our exponential salary structure may not be sustainable over time. The irony is it will only be sustainable if our organization has constant turnover and lower salaried or less tenured employees, or if times get leaner, having to revert back to a 1% raise, meaning that a $40,000 employee that happens to be paying for family health coverage might possibly go in the hole from 1 year to the next. One piece of feedback that I respect is the request not to focus so much on starting pay that I've received from some of my colleagues here, and I've got a very good colleague friend of mine in Harnett County who's an expert in local government. He cautioned, be careful throwing too much money at 19 and 20-year-olds to the detriment of more seasoned employees. Therefore, I went back and reviewed some random salaries who appear to be deserving of increase. These are employees who appear to be committed to our organization. The quick survey found 8 positions ranging from 3.5 years of service to 9 years of service. The ranges for these employees was approximately $36,000 to $43,000. Obviously, these 9 random employees are not starting salaries. I have observed the following issues with our pay plan. One, there appears to be some certification increases that are very specifically defined, while others appear to be rather nebulous. 2, some departments are obviously better suited for promotion from within and lend themselves to this. 3, some departments have duties which are rigidly defined, thus making reclassification extremely difficult. 4, there are instances where some salary grades need adjustment upward. I am not looking to reduce anyone's salary grade, but some salary grades need to be adjusted upward. There are some, and 5, there are some salary anomalies, outliers, whatever terminology you want to use, due to dates hired or some other extraneous factor which needs to be addressed within the context of what department heads, department directors think might be necessary to rectify these. And finally, one of the more disturbing things that I've found out is some employees are getting very solid annual reviews, yet not receiving the 1.25 merit increase. I'm not blaming anyone for these observations. They are merely observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Benita?
Similar to some of the things that Commissioner Schoaf has shared, I feel that many people on our board have consistently expressed to staff that we would like to do more for what I call the direct contact employees in our organization and work to bring them to a more livable wage. Despite all of the research and conversation here, we are at a fair across-the-board percentage. But there's no true fairness in giving a $40,000 employee 3% compared to giving a $100,000 employee 3%. In my opinion, fairness implies equity, not math. I've expressed my concern for the STEP system, and unfortunately, many of my fears have come to fruition. Certain departments seem to have benefited greatly by the system, while others have hardly benefited at all. Steps have been given for what I feel are minute reasons, and others are unable to progress up the ladder because their certifications are required as a prerequisite of their hiring, and they have to obtain those before they begin. In some cases, considerations have been given for extra duties, which is a category that is easily varied by opinion and not specifics. I would have much rather us have stuck to a varying percentage plan that would give an extra boost to the lower rungs of payroll, and I could really care less about how difficult that would be to establish. Regarding this matter, I would encourage every citizen of our county to exercise your right as a taxpayer and request a payroll list. I think it would be surprising to most to see the difference in the pay. Just a quick example, just at a glance, I noticed that we have paramedics that are only making $1 or $2 an hour more than some people on our lawn crew. Now, I appreciate our lawn crew, but mowing a yard and saving a life should be more than $1 or $2 an hour. Another disappointment that I find in this budget is fire funding. Every single year, at the last hour, we throw in a discussion about fire. Our volunteer fire departments have been asking us for years to establish a funding plan. A plan. We have yet to do so. Granted, we have given increases, and they are very appreciative of those, but they still fall short of a solution because we have no plan. Each year we promise to do better, but each year we seem to be back at this same point. We require a budget package from our fire departments that is not even considered, and we expect the departments to be grateful for what they get. Well, they are, but it is us that should be grateful for what we get from the fire service, not the other way around. Most of these men and women do their duties for little or no pay, yet they operate as professional members in our community. They sacrifice in ways that most of employees at the top of our payroll wouldn't even consider. We continuously make decisions that directly affect their operations without including them in the conversation, and we literally brush them aside when they attempt to reach out to us. We are likely in the last generation of volunteer fire and rescue service in our county and maybe even the world. And in my opinion, the less we offer and the less we appreciate, the quicker that day will arrive. It will cost us millions of dollars to replace what these men and women do for us in this county. I do want all of you to know that I know you get a lot of lip service, but I truly appreciate you, and I thank you very much for all that you do. So we've not only neglected to establish a reliable funding plan, but we have also dropped the ball on radio provision and maintenance. I would like to say that that area is going to be better addressed, but at this moment, I cannot say that with confidence. I would like to thank Cameron and his staff at the Fire Marshal's office for all of the extra work and effort that you have put forth to that situation in the last few months. It is greatly appreciated. I'm also really disturbed that the Fire Marshal's office was not granted their admin position, because I truly feel that not only would that help that department, but it would be a blessing to the entire fire service of the county, because someone in that position would be able to help each and every fire department with many things like finding grants and just keeping things organized and making sure they know of classes that they don't miss, and lots of things. Somewhere along our journey, I feel like we have kind of lost our way. We seem to have lost respect for elected officials and citizens and service members alike. I think we have employees that we do not take proper care of. I feel that a sense of self has somehow replaced the role of public service. We often hear all of those around us do this, all of us around us do this. I don't really care about all of those around us. I care about Davie County and taking care of our citizens and our employees here. We should do everything that we can to make sure we're providing the very best. I have requested in the past that commissioners be more included in the early budget conversations. I believe that we would have a better idea of what departments are requesting and why if we were involved sooner. In January, I was hopeful that was going to happen, but it quickly faded, and we actually got the same old last-minute information and had to dig for questions and answers. Sometimes the answers have been given, sometimes reluctantly, and unfortunately, a few times not at all. All of this being said, I do want to say I truly love Davie County. That's why I'm sitting here. There's no prize for sitting in these seats. We get a lot of negative, but we all do this because we love our county, and we love the people of the county and the employees. We appreciate you. Our employees deserve to be properly taken care of. No excuses. All of this being said, we do a lot of things right. I don't want to end on a totally negative note. And we have a lot of people who do things right for very little appreciation and very little recognition. And I'm very thankful for those people. Some of our smaller departments are some of our best departments. Our Veterans Director, our Senior Center, the ladies that work at Register of Deeds, Connie at Environmental Health, our Water Department, and all of our emergency services. We're very, very blessed. But I would really like for us to return those blessings by making sure, especially the people working the hardest at the bottom, are not having to struggle and stress to take care of their families.
Thank you, Benita. Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say thanks to the staff for all the work and all the conversations we've had. We started on this in earnest the second or third week in April, and it's always hard, and there's always not enough money. to go around. But, you know, this year we find ourselves in a unique position. We've got money due to reval that up to this point, or since I've been on this board, you know, we've really not had. So that's good. But I constantly say, and I'll continue to say, as long as I'm up here, that our biggest asset is our employees. And I champion the $1,000 bonus and the 3% raise across the board. As, you know, wages have to be a function of what the market is. And all our employees are being fired upon and poached, and so we got to do what we can. I understand we can't compete with some of the bigger counties, but we need to do the best we can, and I think we are. As far as the fire funding, I hear what Benita says as far as a budget. I mean, we deal with this all the time, and I think given the non-big three, $55,000, a little over 20% is a step in the right direction. But, you know, a capital funding fund to help them with some other needs probably makes sense, and I think Mr. Schoaf might have some things to say about that, so I'll stop there. But again, we've got money this time that we haven't had, and I think that it's time to, I know nobody wants their taxes to go up, and I get that, but I think keeping roughly 31% of the reval and returning the other 69% is fair, and I will be supporting what has been presented. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Any other questions? Yeah, Brent, please.
Just to piggyback off what Terry said and Benita about fire funding, one of the things that I'm committed to doing, and I think we're committed to doing, is coming up with a CapEx type fund. How we get to that, there's different ways. One of the just real simple suggestions that I've made that hopefully we can look at, and we don't have room to implement it right now, but would be to come up with some constant cent value, 75 hundredths of a cent, 1.05 of a cent, 1.10 of a cent, whatever, but it's strictly going to be dedicated to the capital needs. And I'm not talking about radios and stuff. I'm talking about if we start having to build or refurbish or whatever to some of the fire departments. So that can be allocated in a way that it's not part of the formula that we come up with to give your regular funding. That's all I wanted to say.
Anything else? Any other questions? I would say this. It sounds like we've had meetings ongoing since April, 2 commissioners at a time, with staff, multiple occasions, to ask questions, and legitimate constructive questions have been asked, and some have been answered, some have not. I would say this to the board. It sounds to me like there are questions here that need to legitimately be asked and dealt with if possible. We have, 11 days? We do not have to pass a budget until July, when it has to be in place, the end of June. Now, we can proceed forward today. We could defer, say, to come back to June 30th. I stand at the wishes of the board. I can tell you, we have not had a base tax rate change for operations other than the construction of a new high school since I've been on this board, other than at points of reval, where I believe at each point of reval, we have not gone completely revenue neutral, ever. And so that is an option to look at. But as it relates to what Richard said. So I think we're all open. If you want to move forward with the budget today, certainly we can do that. I would ask then this, if you have any other questions for staff or Brian. Please.
The one comment that I would make is that tax increases of any type are always hard. But the one thing that I would like to stress to the public, and I'm not going to apologize for this, I'm as fiscally conservative as anybody you're going to meet. But I also want people to understand that government does not simply operate in a vacuum. And by that I'm saying everybody in these departments has seen massive increases to their, whether it be a bulletproof vest, whether it be fittings for the water department, and I know that's a fund that is sustaining and so forth. Maybe that's not the best example, but the Register of Deeds office, for example, for the first time in maybe 20 years, had an increase in what it costs to file a document. Salaries have gone up a lot during the inflationary pressures of COVID. Now, those are a reality. We can discuss things that may need to be done to our salary schedules, et cetera, but the mere fact that when you open your envelope, and I opened my envelope for my homeowner's insurance and opened it for my car insurance, and proportionally that's going to go up a lot more than my taxes for Davie County are going to go up. Now, is that me saying I'm advocating for raising taxes like crazy? No, I'm just saying there's realistic cost increases to perform the duties. And if I am out in, if when I was on the phone with Suzanne the other day and I got blindsided by my dogs, that explains the limp I've got, and she says, "Do I need to call somebody for you?" I said, "I think I'll be good." I'd like to think that whether it be Don's group, Rodney's group, EMT, whatever, somebody'd get out there and help me. So I always want to be cognizant, and that's not a contrarian view to what Richard's saying, because I always want to look after the taxpayer. I just know that there's been realistic, major sticker shock. And it's not the same to conduct business now as it was to conduct business in, say, 2018 and 19. So that's just a reality of part of doing it. Always need to be vigilant, cognizant, but got to understand that we can't operate in a vacuum.
Mark, I would just, one other thing I'd say about the budget is we have a fund balance policy, which we try to adhere to, and that's for sound fiscal management, but it's also kind of a barometer or a gauge that we're not overtaxing the people. And because no one on this board wants to overtax. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on that. And so I feel good about where we're at with this. I don't. And, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to vote just for my vote, so.
Sure. And you know, Brian, I told you and Robin and other staff that if we begin to add dollars to fund balance in excess of what we need to, in excess of our policy, that we're going to come back to reduce that base rate again. We're going from 77, I believe, to 68, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And we may come back in the next 2 years to reduce the rate again if we need to, in terms of what we put in fund balance. So, any other comments? Okay. I would say then, do we have a motion?
I have a motion that we approve the budget for 25-26. And I'll say as part of that motion, and it doesn't have to be, is that may not be happy with everything on the budget, but for the sake of y'all out there, and moving forward and having some degrees of compromises, that's why I'm making that motion.
Question on that, please. Commissioner Schofer, you making that motion with a tax rate of 64.86 or 68.86.
What should I do?
I think to a
As presented.
That is included in the budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
68.86.
Yeah, 68. I'm making a motion to approve the budget at a tax rate of 68.86 cents per hundred.
Which includes the 4 cent for fire.
Right.
I will second that motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? And I will say this, we have a subcommittee, which right now, is Commissioner Schoaf and Commissioner Reniger that meet with Brian and Robin and others on a consistent basis. And I would say that we continue that throughout this year on personnel, on budget items, so that we, we're all kept made aware of how things are going throughout the year. Okay? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
3-2. All right. Commissioners' comments. Brent?
I'm going to address one more thing in my comments. And that I really need to say. Finally, for the good of the order, I'd like to clarify a few things. I'm very passionate about my role as a county commissioner. Basically, I'm very passionate about anything that I've ever partaken in. We are primarily a service organization, and our most important resource is our people. For anyone bothered by all my ideas and all the things that I come up with, I apologize. Every idea that I bring up has been carefully thought through before throwing it out there. I would suggest that all members of our organization read General Statute 153A-92, 158-76, 153A-94, 158-3A-101, and General Statute 159, Article 3. We as commissioners are charged charged by statutes with numerous roles. My parents taught me to approach life with humility and grace. So I hope in this case you will allow me a moment of indulgence. I had a successful career as a high school teacher, counselor, and coach. I served as registered deeds for 20 years, and together, we as a team, not just me, made tremendous strides innovating our office. I served as a number of years for the parliamentarian of the Registered Deeds Association. I was real respected by my colleagues statewide, working tirelessly on legislation as well as other major projects. And one in particular I will highlight. I will quote Charles Sipsack, distinguished professor at the Albert Coates School of Government in Chapel Hill. Can't believe I'm giving Chapel Hill credit. Since the rewrite of the regulation, this is quote, since the rewrite of the regulations for indexing real estate instruments, with which then Register of Deeds Judy Martin and Brent Schoaf played a key role, the rules have proved to have resulted in significant simplification and much greater consistency. Registers have since encountered much fewer questions or difficulties with the indexing process and with public accessibility to these important records. This rewrite, in addition of technical standards, had numerous stakeholders involved: Secretary of State's office, the Bar Association, Land Records Association, all kinds of associations, and it took 5 years to complete. It was a root canal. But let me just say, I'm not afraid of hard work. As I conclude, I would like it make it very clear that I'm passionate about Davie County being the place that employees would love to work or do love to work. I'm 60 years old, and since becoming a commissioner, I have been treated differently than I ever have been before in my professional or academic career. I am accustomed to having my opinions and suggestions appreciated and valued. Recently, I have run up against institutional inertia. I have been browbeaten, disrespected, and treated with condescension. I've also had my business acumen doubted, my ethics placed in question, and my actions quite simply misrepresented. Let me make it clear. I believe people should be rewarded based on merit. I don't play favorites. I've never played favorites. And if you don't believe it, call Nancy Catherine Schoaf, my 26-year-old daughter. Call Cindy Stone. Call Jenda Haynes. I don't play favorites. I have high expectations for employees, so I advocate for employee. And I'm going to advocate for an employee whether it's a friend or not, because trust me, if they happen to be a friend, they've earned my advocacy. I have had discussions about how our organization could possibly be structured differently, but I have never, and I repeat never, asked management to hire, fire, promote, demote, or discipline a single employee. My main focus has been on policies that could help with employee recruitment, retention, enhancing employee benefits, and building a team culture that boosts employee morale. I was elected by the citizens of Davie County to provide a degree of oversight and stewardship over the county and its resources. I will no longer apologize for attempting to perform my role as county commissioner. Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Richard?
Mr. Chairman, I know this has been probably one of the most difficult years that any of us has ever had on this board. And I look down the line here and I know all the hard work that has been done by each and every commissioner, even though we don't see eye to eye all the time. That still doesn't mean that we're not doing our job as we feel we should. And I'd like to look out at the audience and say thank you for all that you do for the citizens of Davie County as well. You are wonderful employees and citizens.
Thank you, Richard. Terry?
Thank you. I appreciate everyone coming out. Again, it's glad to get this behind us, and I think it's already stated. I think it's a fair budget, and appreciate what all you do. And see you next month, or see you at the July meeting, I hope.
Benita?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will slightly piggyback on Commissioner Schoaf's comments. We know, sitting up here, that we just set ourselves up for criticism and misquotes and all of those kinds of things. But I think what we really would like is for people to come to us and ask about those questions instead of spreading untruths. Just yesterday, I had 2 phone calls telling me things I said that I did not say. So if somebody tells you something I said and you think it's out of character, or if you like it or don't like it, please call me. I do want to finish with just saying thank you to our critical response team. Due to traveling, I was unable to be at the opioid event on Friday, but I know it was wonderful. And I am so grateful for Summer and Greg and all of the people on that team for all of the work that they're doing in this county to help people who need them the most. They reach out to people that most people don't even notice or don't know how to help and don't know what to do. And I am just extremely grateful for them and the lives that they're changing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Benita. One quick question, Brian, we have this, is this something you want to deal with in, you want us to just, peruse over and we'll deal with it in July? Okay, all right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate all that y'all do. It's not just the, Brian and, Robin and Cindy that work on this budget. As a team, we all work together, and we thank you for that. So, we will take a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else. Do I have that? Okay, Benita got you, Richard. Richard seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you.